What is up, guys? Today we have a Salamangreat deck profile updated for Dawn of Majesty format. Not much has changed. Dawn of Majesty, or Yawn of Majesty, as a few select market watch channels like to call it, has been out for a couple weeks now and not really changed the format too much. But we will look at this list. I've been playing this particular list for the past 3 weeks or so at my locals and actually managed to top all 3 weeks, only dropping a few games, and I think I tied one match. So this list is technically undefeated for the last couple weeks at locals, so let's take a look at it and see what's inside. So first of all, we're going to play one copy of Salamangreat Gazelle. This is obviously one of the best cards in the deck. For those of you unfamiliar, it can basically Foolish Burial any Salamangreat card when it's summoned, and it also summons out of your hand when any Salamangreat monster is sent to your graveyard. So you can trigger that in a number of ways. For example, sending cost for Signet Mining by sending one from your hand, or by just link summoning and linking a Salamangreat on your field away. Next, we're playing 3 copies of Foxy. So a lot of people are playing maybe 2 copies of this. I see more people playing 3 now that Mirage Stalio is back at 1 copy, which obviously I am playing. But I think this deck likes to focus on Salamangreat cards, and so when you're playing a very heavy Salamangreat list, you definitely want to play more copies of Foxy, because Foxy becomes better with its excavate effect when you can actually excavate Salamangreat cards instead of just whiffing every turn. But realistically, the second effect is better when it's in the graveyard. You can pitch a Salamangreat card to bring it back, and then pop a face-up spell or trap. So definitely comes up quite a bit. It can get you out of a lot of sticky situations because it resolves in grave. So if you have something just like a floodgate negating your effects, you can just resolve that in grave and pop the face-up floodgate. So Spinny, another Salamangreat staple. This is being played at 3 because it's just insane for Mirage Stalio plays. If you don't know, Spinny can come back from the graveyard for free as long as you control a Salamangreat monster, but it will be banished once it leaves the field after that. But there's a workaround where if you actually XZ summon and use this as material for that summon, it'll be underneath the rank 3 monster, and then when you detach it for its effect, it actually will kind of bypass that restriction, and it will go to the grave for you to be used on your next turn, basically. So it's still once per turn, hard once per turn, but basically you can get it at least one more time. Maybe if you play other rank 3s, you can keep making rank 3s from it, but it'll probably get banished on that second use, but still good enough to be able to use at least twice. That's a lot of value you're getting. So next, we're playing 2 copies of Jack Jaguar. This card is also very, very good. Basically, it's kind of like a Spinny where it can come back from the grave once per turn to a zone your Salamangreat Link monster points to, just by shuffling in a Salamangreat card from your graveyard. And the best part is that a lot of the cards are, you can basically shuffle in cards like Sunlight Wolf or Mirage Stalio, where this card becomes almost beneficial because you want more Sunlight Wolves in your graveyard so you can keep extending, and you want Stalio back in your extra deck so you can keep summoning it because you only have 1 copy. And then the benefit is that it also gets to come back. So it's kind of a win-win. So Jack Jaguar is an insane card, and obviously we're playing high quantities of Salamangreat cards because they're very good, but we're also playing Pot of Desires, so you definitely want to keep your Salamangreat card ratios pretty high. And then we have 1 copy of Falco. This card is honestly one of the better cards in the entire deck. It can do so much for you if you're kind of in a pinch. So if you send it to the graveyard, it can set any Salamangreat spell or trap from your graveyard to your field. So that basically lets you recycle your traps, or potentially even a card like Will or Sanctuary if something happened to it. But the other insane effect is how it kind of interacts with cards like Gazelle and other cards, other Salamangreat cards, basically, where if it's in the graveyard, you can return a Salamangreat monster from your field to your hand and then summon it from the graveyard. So that allows you to basically get cards back into your hand, and there's no restriction on summoning those again. So if you happen to just have a Spinny on the field or something like that, and Falco Engrave, you can pop Spinny back to your hand, summon Falco, and then just normal summon Spinny, for example, to continue with your plays. So there's a lot of free advantage you can get off of him. But then if you're able to combo with Gazelle, where you have a Gazelle on the field, you can return the Gazelle, summon Falco, link off the Falco, then summon the Gazelle, then trigger its Foolish Burial effect. So there's a lot of insane plays that you can basically get. Another great one is that on your opponent's turn, if you have Gazelle in hand and you find a manage a way to trigger that Gazelle by a number of different conditions, or if they just happen to pop one of your Salamangreat monsters, you can summon that Gazelle, send Falco to the grave, and then that Falco can set a card like Rage, which will be or Rage or Roar. I mean, either trap could be situational, but basically that's it's going to be live on your turn since you set it during your opponent's turn. So there's a lot of niche interactions that you can actually use Falco for. And honestly, Falco, the more you play Salad and the more you learn about the deck, Falco just gets better and better, and you're going to really want to see him in your deck. But I don't think more than one copy is good, because you don't really want to draw him. But you definitely want to be able to summon him off of Gazelle primarily. So these honorary Salamangreat cards, Flame Buffalo, once it leaves the field, you can discard a Cyberse and draw 2. So it's really great. A lot of synergy. It's a fire Cyberse. Even if you draw 2 copies of himself, you can link one off for Balinks and discard him. If they, let's say you normal summon Buffalo and they know you're going to try to go into Balinks to search the field spell, they might compulse your Buffalo if people are playing Compulse. I mean, I'm not sure, but just a one niche scenario, and then it has left the field, so you can activate its effect and discard that same copy of Buffalo. So a lot of crazy effects you can do with that. And I think a lot of people would prefer this over Lady Debug. I would say I 100% prefer it over Debug. I'm actually not playing Debug in the deck, but if I were to play Debug, I probably would still play 3 Buffalo and play 1 Debug in addition. But I definitely would not be playing 3 Lady Debug instead of Buffalo. But just my personal preference. It's worked out really great so far. I mean, you can be able to draw like 4 in a turn if you combine Buffalo with a Pot of Desires. I mean, that's really crazy. And then you're obviously searching off of Balinks, almost guaranteed. Obviously, unless they negate you, but that's just almost guaranteed to happen. So I mean, you can be basically easily adding like 5 cards to your hand, and then you'll have probably other avenues through Signet Mining or Salamangreat Gazelle to actually search for specific cards you need. So onto the hand traps. We're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So this obviously is one of the best hand traps in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It hits so many actual cards and has a lot of niche interactions, like being able to Ash Cypher and Gear Gamma, although Gamma is not a hard once per turn, so just be careful about that. But if you really need to make a play go through, you can basically stop them, at least momentarily, with your Ash. So there's a lot of good things about that, but the huge benefit is that it's actually a fire monster. So cards like Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf allows you to add a fire monster from your graveyard to your hand if you trigger its effect by summoning to a link arrow it points to. So that basically gives you almost infinite Ash if you need it, which is extremely powerful when you're recurring your Salamangreat monsters every turn and then recurring a hand trap every turn. So not only are you able to get a board presence and get a lot of monster effects and damage on the board, but you'll also be able to recur a hand trap, and that's not even taking into consideration the fact that you can probably also recur a trap every turn from your grave. So basically, Salad's able to set up a monster, a trap, and a hand trap every turn once it gets rolling, and that is extremely hard to deal with for some decks. So that is basically just how you absolutely steamroll your opponent once you get going and just win by sheer card advantage. So the next card, I think Ghost Bell is probably one of like the sleeper hand traps this format. I know it's like gaining popularity, but I think this card has so many niche interactions where you can Ghost Bell like obviously a lot of the popular cards like Tri Brigade cards. You can Ghost Bell just a wide variety of like staple cards. Like Call by the Grave, for example. So there's like a number of interactions like DD Crow. I mean, there's just like the list kind of goes on once you actually start digging, because people are very accustomed to, you know, understanding that you can Ash like almost any effect in the game at this point, practically, because so many cards just search from deck now. But Ghost Bell is kind of, I think, the up and coming Ash, because as you're able to search from your deck, the next like evolution of that is being able to utilize your graveyard more and more, because obviously like being able to search from your deck is great, but then making your graveyard turn into like your second hand, that's how a lot of decks these days have a significant amount of power. You know, moving cards out of the graveyard is a very common occurrence, so Ghost Bell just comes up more and more, it seems like, every format. So I think 2 is great. Obviously, it doesn't have the synergy being able to recur like a fire monster, but all of these hand traps basically are level 3, so you're able to make some level 3 plays if you need to with a rank 3 Mirage Stalio. Maybe not the most ideal, but definitely in a pinch you can do that. I would consider cutting Ash to 2, because you are able to recur it almost every turn if you want to, and also it's, you know, a hard once per turn, so you're not going to be able to really use both in the same turn if you draw 2. But granted, it's not unheard of using them, you know, one on your opponent's turn and one on your turn, actually, as your opponent tries to activate card effects on your turn. So I think that's like a point of discussion right there, where you know, if you want to see Ash every game, you know, obviously you want to play 3, but drawing 2 can be a bit unfortunate. So so let's move on to the spell and trap lineup. So for the first spell and trap card, we obviously have a Salamangreat Sanctuary. This is the field spell. It lets you kind of let all of your extra deck work on its own and kind of get into the swing of things, where you're able to reincarnate each Salamangreat extra deck monster once per turn using itself as material. So cards like Sunlight Wolf benefit from being reincarnated, and then your trap cards also benefit from having a reincarnated Link monster on the field. So very, very powerful. It has a niche second effect that rarely comes up, but I guess theoretically it could come up in the right circumstance. So definitely don't sleep on that effect. Make sure you know what that does. Salamangreat Circle, another limited Salamangreat card. It's basically a Rhoda for the deck. It allows you to search any Salamangreat monster from your deck to your hand. But the second effect could come up. Again, it's kind of niche. It'll rarely come up, but when it does, it's very, very good. So if you have a reincarnated Link monster, you're able to protect it from other monster effects for the rest of the turn. So for example, if you have a Sunlight Wolf and they activate Nibiru because it was your 5th summon, you can chain this to protect your Sunlight Wolf from getting sent to the graveyard or attributed. And being able to activate this in the draw phase, because it is a quick play spell card, is very important, because Draw and Lock is a very prevalent card in this format. So I would always recommend, if you don't think you're using the second effect, just to shotgun this in the draw phase. It's great Ash bait, and then also if they do Droll, it's kind of dead, because you're able to search off this and then get one more search before they're able to Droll you. So it really trades very, very nicely with Droll. 2 copies of Will of the Salamangreat. So this is kind of your Monster Born / pseudo Soul Charge, where you can basically just play this and get a monster from your hand or field reborn every turn. And you're also able to pop it, and as long as you have a reincarnated Salamangreat monster, you can summon up to that many monsters equal to its Link rating. So it combos very well with a reincarnated Sunlight Wolf. If you're low on resources and you have a reincarnated Sunlight Wolf, you can pop this and get 2 summons, and then add this back to your hand to use on the next turn, so you don't lose out really on any advantage using that Sunlight Wolf's reincarnated effect. So I think 3 is probably too many to play, because if you draw 2, it's very, very dead, because likely if your opponent is trading a resource to pop Will, you're probably still in a good position, because, I mean, you probably have other traps to kind of support you, but Will is a very good card. And then also, if they pop your 1 Will, I mean, you have a second one to go into potentially. But yeah, you really don't want to draw multiples of this card. It really, really slows down your deck, because it really does nothing on its own. It only does something if you have Salamangreat monsters. So that's the kind of the catch there. So I definitely think about playing 3, but I think in all my testing, 2 has been the correct number. And then now we're on to the honorary Salamangreat spell card, which is Sign Up Mining. So this is basically a Rhoda just for sending one card from your hand to the graveyard. You add a level 4 lower Cyburst. It's a hard once per turn, but this allows you to have great consistency in your Salamangreat deck. It also lets you trigger Gazelle by, if you pitch like a Spinny from your hand, for example, you can search Gazelle and immediately activate Gazelle's effect, especially some from hand on resolution. So it's very, very powerful. It allows you to get cards like Jack Jaguar and Foxy into the grave, where let's say you had a Spinny that you wanted to normal summon, and then you could also pitch Foxy and have that go to the grave, or you could pitch Jack Jaguar, because obviously if you have 2 normal summons, or I guess a better example is if you had Flame Buffalo, you can do that and then pitch one card like a Foxy and then pitch another card like a Jack Jaguar with Sign Up Mining. So basically you're loading your grave, because that's actually the best way to get your deck rolling. A card like Jack Jaguar does not really do much in hand, or Foxy. Really, Spinny and Gazelle are the only 2 cards that from hand actually can really do anything. So being able to get cards in the grave is actually very, very good, and that's why I think Lady Debug is not as good, because it does search one for free, but at the same time, loading your grave is actually not really an issue. It's almost a benefit in many, many cases. So next card is Pot of Desires. I think this card is a must play in Salad, but I will concede that I think playing 2 could be correct, but playing 3 is just, I think, the way to go, at least for all the testing I've done. It's a very, very good card. I mean, once you're done searching Sanctuary, or hopefully you got to search Gazelle off of some method, then you can just Pot of Desires and literally banish 10 cards. You really don't care what they are, and you're just drawing 2. So, I mean, it is an insane card. I mean, combining it with Flame Buffalo, Pot of Desires, Sanctuary Search off of Balinks, and like a Sign Up Mining or a Circle, I mean, you're searching, literally like 6 cards in one turn, and so that's just gonna, I mean, overwhelm your opponent with resources. So it's definitely, I think, a must play. If you find 2 to be the correct number, that very well may be. You really don't want to brick on it. And late game, so after resolving 2, you do start to feel your deck getting pretty thin. I mean, there's a number of games where I'm down to single digits in my deck, 5, 6 cards, and so I know that my turns are limited, but I am able to usually close out those games once I have that many resources. So I have yet to find it where it's actually been a problem, even resolving 2 in a game. Usually I'm able to actually close out that game. So I have yet to deck out in at least the recent memory. So Cyclone, this is a pretty big staple, I think, for the current game. I think it's starting to outclass cards like Twin Twister. Harpy's Feather Duster is still a very, very good card, but I think Cyclone is really going to pick up more and more steam as we go farther into the future here. Just because being able to banish cards is extremely important. Just for example, even playing against Salamangreat, I mean, being able to banish their traps and not just have them go to the grave is really detrimental to the whole Salamangreat strategy. I mean, they rely on things just going to the grave, so being able to banish Sanctuary or being able to banish Rage or something like that is just going to really set them back. So, and that's just a rogue deck. I mean, there's many meta decks where if you're banishing cards, even just like Mystic Mine, where it's just unable to be recovered, and they cannot be protected using non-destruct effects or protection. So very good. I mean, it's only cost 1,000 life points. You don't actually have to discard a card like Twin Twisters. So I think you'll just going to see more and more of this in the future. I think this will become the absolute go-to back removal without question. So I think right now it's still a little bit iffy, but that's for sure going to be in the future, in my opinion. And then one Call by the Grave. If this card was at more than 1, I probably would play it. But at the same time, the card that really hurts Salamangreat the most is like a card like Nibiru. You can argue Droll and Lock, but I think it's really not anywhere near as bad. So the main thing is that you really want to stop cards like Ash and I guess Diddy Crow and Valor, but I think those are kind of losing their I don't want to say like effect, but they're not game winners. I mean, if you Ash someone, I mean, you don't. expect to win that game because you drew Ash, you know. So it's starting to, I think, lose their potency where cards like, you know, even a card like Gamma, you know, it can't be called by the Greater. So I mean, there's like a lot of situations where it really isn't, you know, the card it used to be, because there's so many other hand trap options that are very popular now. But at the same time, it does have a lot of good interactions. Once again, if you're playing against the Salamangreat matchup, for whatever reason, you can usually call it by their Balinks beforehand, before it gets to actually battle, or you can call by the other Sunlight Wolf in the grave if they had one, and then the Sunlight Wolf on the field will not get its effects. So there's a lot of niche interactions like that, but I think that's probably still good enough to play until we get better cards like Crossout Designator. I've also thought about Instant Fusion with a card like Millenniumized Restrict, but been toying around with that. But I think Called By is still the way to go, just for how many niche interactions it still does have. And now we can move on to the trap cards. So the trap cards for Salamangreat, it's a pretty standard lineup in my opinion. Playing 2 Salamangreat Rage here. This is the card that is able to often pop multiple cards on your opponent's field. So if you have a reincarnated Link monster, it targets that Link monster and pops cards on your opponent's field up to its Link rating, which is non-targeting. So very, very good in terms of trading card value. So usually you can get this to be targeting a Sunlight Wolf, in some cases a Heat Leo, and you're able to pop 2 to 3 cards just for this one trap, and then recur it with a card like Sunlight Wolf on your turn. Or you can, you know, do a little more cheeky things like sending Falco to grave to get that back. Roar, it's a very good card. It's the counter trap. You kind of have to play it, and it's, I think, more and more the thing I'm seeing is that I'm using Roar to stop board wipe kind of effects, like Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm. Basically, trading a Roar for that allows me to keep all of my other set traps safe for that turn, unless they happen to draw multiple board wipes, which would be unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. So being the counter trap, you just have to control a Salamangreat Link monster, and then you're able to get it back off of Wolf every turn. It also has a special effect where if you reincarnate a Salamangreat Link monster, you can actually set it and then banish it when it leaves the field. So it's kind of like the trap version of Spinny. But that does come up, and the fact that I'm playing 2, I think allows me to use that effect more and more, where I don't feel as bad using it and having it be banished, because I'm able to potentially get the second one either by drawing it or off of a card like Gazelle. So next we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, and this card I think does a lot in this current format. There's a lot of cards where if you are able to stop the right monster effect, you can really slow down your opponent's turn. So you actually see a lot of people playing Effect Veiler in addition to Infinite Impermanence to hit a lot of the key decks right now. So I would definitely recommend playing Imperm, but I still think Veiler is not as versatile of an option, because you're only liable to use it on your opponent's turn, and as well as you it has to go to grave, right? So you can get hit by things like Called By, which obviously, being at 1, not as prevalent, but still comes up. So being able to just go second and shotgun this, and to negate any card of your choosing, it does target, but that's really its only downside. It's a very, very strong card, and I think it's probably a must play in this format, in my opinion. And then the next and final 2 cards are 2 copies of Solemn Strike. I've been playing around with a lot of different hand trap variations, and Solemn Strike I keep coming back to as one of the best cards to play to kind of round out the trap lineup. And I think it's because that 2 copies of Solemn Strike is just enough where you see it every now and then, kind of when you're in a pinch, you're able to just strike a big Link monster that your opponent summons, or you're able to just kind of have it where you're just setting one more card face down. So if they have a single Cosmic Cyclone, instead of searching the Rage and then getting the Rage back to your hand and only setting 1 card, playing more traps allows you to kind of bluff a little bit more, so you're able to kind of set 2, and then it gives them less information. So if you have, the 1 Rage that you got off Sunlight Wolf, and another card set, they won't know which is which. So that definitely plays into the mind games quite a bit. And let's say they were to hit the rage, then they still don't know what this card is. Or if they didn't hit the rage, then, you know, trading a Solemn Strike isn't too bad to protect your rage for that turn. So it's very, very good. 1,500 life points. Obviously, life points don't matter as much as card advantage, so it's just a very versatile card. You can play going first, going second. So I think other cards I've seen played are like cards like Goes a Match and Rivalry, but I think that the best card out of the ones I've seen and tested with is Solemn Strike. I do side the third copy for when I'm going first, just because of how powerful it is. So let's move on to the extra deck now. So starting off our extra deck, we have 3 copies of Salamangreat Phalanx. This is the Link one that kind of kicks off the entire deck. It allows us to easily go into it by only requiring a single Salamangreat monster. Actually, it's a level 4 lower Cypress, so you're able to use things like Flame Buffalo or Lady Debug. But it allows you to basically search your field spell, and the quick access to this makes sure that you have easy access to that field spell each and every game, so that's why you generally only play 1. You don't want to brick on the field spell, but this is very good because it has a second effect that allows you to banish it from the graveyard to protect the destruction of your Salamangreat card or cards face up on the field. So if they were to use, for example, like a Lightning Storm or something, and you had multiple monsters, you could just banish 1 Phalanx and protect them all. It also helps you keep card advantage, where if they are able to attack your Sunlight Wolf once, you can banish the Phalanx, and then they won't actually be able to destroy it. And then having that reincarnated Sunlight Wolf on the field and not in the graveyard is a huge power swing, because if they can't get rid of that, you can just, you know, kind of go off the next turn and just get all of your resources back. So things like that really change how the game plays out generally. So speaking of him, we have 3 copies of Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. Probably one of the best cards in the extra deck. It just does so much for the Salamangreat strategy, especially how it interacts with the traps. So you can relink into him using the field spell, like I said, and then if you summon to one of the zones he points to, you get a free fire monster. And so if your opponent doesn't really know your cards or doesn't read your cards, they'll often summon to that zone, and then you'll be able to get a fire monster on their turn as well as your turn. So it's a very, very good card in that regard. And then it also allows you, when it's reincarnated, to get a spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand every turn. So very versatile in terms of being able to add a monster and a spell and trap every turn to your hand, so you can kind of pick and choose what you want. So basically, you definitely want to run 3. A lot of times you use Jack Jaguar, shuffle him back into the deck so you can keep extending and keep grinding until you finally are able to out-resource your opponent. So next, this is more of a controversial pick. I would say 2 Heat Leo. I've seen a lot of people cutting this, and in my testing, I actually found that this card comes up a significant bit more than you might actually think, because of its effect not only to shuffle back a back row when it's summoned, so it's actually just a non-once per turn effect. So if you summon one, you can shuffle back a back row, and then if you reincarnate it, you can shuffle back a second back row. So it's able to kind of get rid of 2 cards. It doesn't pop. It doesn't do anything like that. It just gets them back into the deck. So that's probably the best place you could put them, aside from just, say, banishing them face down, for example. So, but its other effect comes up a good bit, actually, much more than you'd think. So if you reincarnate it, you can actually make the attack of any monster on the field equal the attack of any monster in your graveyard. So you can play this a number of ways, where if you have a big monster in your opponent's field in attack mode, you're able to usually look to an Ash or a Phalanx in your graveyard and actually make that 0 or 500, for example, and easily get over that with just your 2300 Heat Leo. But the other time that it might come up is that you can actually change the attack of your own monsters. So say you have something in the graveyard that has a significant number of attack. I mean, just off the top of my head, you could just think of a card like Salamangreat Heat Leo, for example. So just beefing something up to 2300, that might be able to actually accomplish what you want. But there are certain cases where you're able to find cards with slightly more attack, but that's basically able to, you know, let's say beef up a Balinx just to 2300 attack just to get over another monster, and that'll really change the game for kind of a tempo and just being able to remove one more monster in your opponent's field. And then finally, the return of Salamangreat Mirage Stalio. It's been a long time coming, and I think that this card actually really makes the deck much more playable. It makes it extremely powerful in being able to summon any monster from your deck using its first effect. It also has a second effect where if you link it off into a Salamangreat monster, you can return any monster on your opponent's field to the hand. So this, I think it's becoming less and less good for a lot of cards to return to the hand or the extra deck, but I think it's still good enough in terms of being able to kind of push for damage, because I think that's one of the biggest things that Salo does very well, is that if you're able to just bounce a card back to hand, even temporarily, and push for damage, like let's say about 4,000 or so damage, you can let them resummon that card next turn and deal with it using your traps or potentially monster effects, and then just kind of rinse and repeat the process and just kind of, you know, remove their entire field and then just push for another 4,000. And that's what Salo generally does the best, is just being able to just outgrind your opponent, where they just, you know, are just like basically top decking, and then you just use your set roar and just negate whatever they draw, and then you just go to your turn and kind of blast them for another 1,000 damage or so, and then, you know, you can kind of continue from there. But the big benefit of Salad is actually the OTK potential. So I currently do not own Access Code Talker, so that would be the kind of the trifecta here. It's Update Jammer, Transcode Talker, and Access Code Talker. But for Update Jammer and Transcode, you can still OTK. Basically, if you're able to get 3 bodies on the field, you're able to go into Update using 2 of them, and then Transcode using the 3rd, and then bring back the update and have this attack twice, this be co-linked, 8,100 damage right there. Only thing you have to be careful is that if you use Mirage Stalio in the same turn, you're locked into only activating fire effects, so you cannot actually kind of get that combo to go off of. And then Transcode's only restrictions that you have to only summon Cyberse monsters for the whole turn. So you definitely want to be careful with that, but most of your cards are Cyberse, so in theory you should really have no issue. And then so for some other powerful cards, I play Nightmare Unicorn and Appaloosa. I think Unicorn actually comes up a surprising amount of the time, more than you probably would think. Just being able to kind of go into a semi-powerful, you know, Link 3, 2200 attack, and just shuffle any card back into the deck. It's very, very good because you're able to just remove an additional threat, and that kind of lets Salad play. Is, you know, if you're able to just get a big guy off the field, you know, you can just kind of, again, push for damage, same concept with Mirage Stalio, and then just, you know, have your opponent top decking and just use your reset roar or something and just negate it. So, I mean, that's really good. And then Appaloosa, kind of the same thing. If you don't really have any other options, you can just kind of pull your monsters into an Appaloosa, and if you have, you know, the case where your opponent only has 1 or 2 cards, you can negate, you know, both their monster effects in this case, and then just, you know, kind of continue to push for damage, and as you draw more and more advantage. And then we play 2 rank 4s. I think Abyss Dweller is the more common choice. A lot of people go into Abyss Dweller to stop graveyard effects, just like how I was saying. Ghost Spell is a very, very up-and-coming card. I think Abyss Dweller, people have always noted the power of Abyss Dweller. So that's a great rank 4 to go into. But Baguska, I think, is kind of a sleeper in terms of not only its artwork, but but also the fact that it can do so much in terms of stopping your opponent without actually really affecting you that much, because you mostly play Link monsters. So Link monsters obviously can't really be affected by Baguska because they can't go into defense position. So you're able to just kind of sit on this Baguska and have your whole Salamangreat combo working for the most part, and just kind of outgrind your opponent once again, you know, and just kind of whittle their health down. So that's really the extent of the side deck, and or the extra deck, excuse me. And I think out of any changes I would make to this entire list, I would consider playing Obviously, access code, if I had it, that would probably be almost a must play, but I've actually found that I've been able to win quite a bit without access code. So if you're trying to build this deck on a budget, I mean, as you can see, the cards in this deck aren't extremely expensive. You can probably build this deck for, I don't know, maybe like $150, $200, maybe. Something like that's not, it's not the, not the most expensive deck. I mean, that's pretty reasonable for a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. So yeah, I'll probably be posting a few more deck profiles in the future, and also probably doing a combo video for some new Salamangreat combos using cards like Mirage Stalio. So be sure to look out for that. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.